Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind, episode 63. Welcome back to The Luminous Mind with Cameron Taylor on home life, fatherhood, and schooling. Maybe if you want to talk about some of your experiences that you had, when you were first like a young father and husband trying to provide, how you came out of that situation of not being able to even be hired by the Sears call center.
That was a challenging time. I was newly married and my first business failed. So I had thousands of dollars in business debt. And so at that point, I was like, well, I have to get a job. I'm going to go bankrupt. My wife was working for a urologist at the time, so we didn't have any children yet. That was a very challenging time as I went month after month after month with no work, dozens and dozens of rejections. But as I prayed and pondered during that time period, there was one prompting and impression that just kept coming. And it was that I was to start a lecture series at Brigham Young University on Christ-centered leadership and entrepreneurship, which were two topics I was passionate about and had done some teaching on. But it didn't seem to make any sense at the time. It was just like, well, I need some income.
Yeah.
And again, so I was like, I'm going to go serve. It's not going to make any money. It's not going to cost me any money to put on the lecture series at the university. But it just had that burn that that's what I was supposed to do. And as I prayed, as I was applying for the different jobs and I'd get the rejection, I would pray. I remember after that rejection from Sears call center, I was like, Lord, I want to be able to provide for my family. I'm trying here. And the answer came back. It says, the distinct impression that came as I was offering those prayers is that you're not supposed to have a job. You're supposed to build a business. And I was like, well, how in the world am I? It's like, I tried that. My first business failed. I have now no money. I have less than nothing now because of the burden of debt. And yet the Lord says, no, I'm closing the door of getting a job, but I will open the door and I will open a way for you to start a business. And through that lecture series, one of the individuals that I brought in was a successful entrepreneur and had built several multi-million-dollar companies, and so we brought him in to teach. And he had left after his lecture. He came back about an hour later, and I was still visiting with students, as often you'd see at iFamily. My wife would always say when I am teaching at any of the classes, she's like, you never come home after your class is over. And I was like, that's usually the case. I usually stay after class for an hour or two, was talking to the students, and that was the case there as well. But he came back. He said, oh, I'm glad that you're still here. He said, the Spirit told me I need to come back and we need to meet. And so we set up a meeting, and he talked about all the different businesses he was working on. I talked about all the different things I was working on. And then we felt like there was this business that was the idea we could partner on and that we could build together. He would put up all the money and I would put up the time. And he had an office open next to his. He says, well, that office would be yours if, we come to terms and end the agreement. And I said, well, let me go in there and pray about it. And I knelt down in that office and prayed, and I got a clear answer that I was supposed to build that business. And it was a miracle. Then I went to work every day, and it was creating a national law firm specializing in lawsuit protection, tax reduction, and estate planning, which I didn't have background in, but and it was in a realm of business that I wasn't familiar with, but I went and started every day with prayer and meditation and said, well, help me, Lord, to figure out how to build this business. And our first full year of business, we did over $1 million in sales, and then we're able to grow and develop the business from there.
Wow.
But I think from that challenge, what did I learn from that experience is that I was so focused on getting a job when the Lord had a different path for me. And I'm glad that the Lord closed off that path, that I received the rejection from the call center. They say if the Lord closes a door, he opens another door. And I've learned to become a better instrument in his hands of trying to really say, what does the Lord want me to do? And to follow those promptings and those directives. And I know that he can make much more out of my life than I ever could.
Yeah. But sometimes as a young person, you talked about, not necessarily teaching somebody how to learn as much as teaching them how to follow the Spirit. I mean, when you've already had one failure, it makes it that much harder to listen again, because you're like, is this just some crazy idea? Or, is this, I mean, what would be your guiding light about that?
Yeah, because that first business that I started, I was surprised on that one as well. I prayed about it, and I thought for sure the answer would be no as I was presented with this business opportunity. And as I knelt, it was one of those times you don't always get a clear answer like that. But on the starting that business with the gentleman from the lecture series, very clear, no mistakable answer. Yes. But the one before that failed, I got that answer as well. And then looking back, I was like, well, if the Lord wanted me to start this business, I was like, so did the Lord want me to lose tens of thousands of dollars? And I look back on it after the fact, is when I was in it, I was like, no. I still never questioned that. I was like, okay, this is what the Lord wants me to do. But that first business, I learned some incredibly important things from that business that prepared me and set me up to succeed in the next business. And I still say that first business was my most successful business. From that business, Paula and I reconnected. And she actually came and helped me with building and developing that business. And we had met in college, but then we hadn't really associated for a couple of years. And so we reconnected, inviting her to come and assist me and help me with building the business. And then we just developed this fantastic friendship, and then we were dating and got married. And so I still look at that first business that I see from that business, the Lord connected me with my eternal companion. So I still say that first business was my most profitable business. And the Lord sees everything from beginning to end. And so I thought, I was supposed to do the business to succeed financially. Well, the business didn't succeed financially in business terms, but yet it was still a very profitable business. And the things that I learned and the relationships that I developed and found through that business.
Well, and sometimes when we see something fail, we think we're a failure. Instead of a business failing, sometimes we think that I'm just a failure. And, so I like how you use that for a good learning experience versus just thinking, well, I failed at that, so I'm going to fail at everything and not listen to that voice or that prompting ever again.
And it goes both ways. The business failed, but again, I was doing what the Lord wanted me to do. And so the next business that I did, it was a tremendous success financially. And again, I didn't know if it would be that first year. Anytime with a new startup business, we had negative cash flow every month for the first, year. I needed some money to at least live, so my partner paid me $1,500 a month. So I made $1,500 a month for the first year. And then in month 13, we had a very profitable month, and then I was able to have profit sharing from there on out. I remember after we did, where there's like 1 week, we did like $500,000 in sales in a week. And I remember my business partner came in and he's like, I'm going to give you a raise. He's like, I'm going to double your salary. So my salary went from $1,500 a month to $3,000 a month, but I was never worried about the salary. That's why I took a very small salary, because I knew that I would make my money in profits. And I said, I want to make money when the company makes money. So I never did. Even the company grew to where we were doing $100 million in sales and 400 employees, and my salary stayed at $36,000 a year. So,
wow.
But
holy cow, that's crazy.
But no, I guess I got a little off track there, because I was starting with the story of saying, yes, the first business failed, and everyone looked and say, oh, Cameron's a failure. His business failed. Now, the next business, when you build a business from idea to millions a month, everyone's like thinking, wow, Cameron is a genius. Cameron is and I would go into some of these board meetings, and they would give me such praise and different things, and and you'd get recognized for different awards. And my response was always the same. It's like, no, none of the praise and honor goes to me. It all has to go to God. I was like, I'm just an instrument in his hands. I mean, that business from its formation to its growth, it was a miracle. And awesome. I was just an instrument who was a part of the process. And so that's what I was like, if I deserve the praise for this, well, then I deserve all the blame and criticism for the business that failed. And I was like, I'm the same guy. And yes, I've learned some things, but I'm the same guy. I'm still the same guy that couldn't get hired for $6.50 an hour or failed at the first business. I'm just trying to do my best to to be an instrument in God's hands and do what he asked me to do. And that's where the real
success comes in.
Yep,
right.
That's where the success comes from. That's where the recognition should go. And that was also, it was interesting in some of the board meetings. My partner, he'd actually brought in several other executives to try to build this company. And they had some of those, they were paying large six-figure salaries to develop the business that I partnered with him on. And hearing after the fact, he's like, I was really hesitant to partner with you on this. He was a young kid who, didn't have a lot of experience. And I remember that just before I did the business, they had brought in this marketing guru consultant that they were paying him $10,000 a day to develop this business idea. And they're paying me $1,500 a month. So I guess it wasn't much risk for them. I was like, man, they could pay me. I'd have to work, 7 months to equal what they paid this guy in a day. But it was interesting later, as they told me some of these stories, they're like, yeah, we didn't think you would succeed at it because none of these other people did. Because the guy we were paying $10,000 a day, the guy we were paying $120,000 a year, he said none of them were able to build the business. Was it your education at BYU and business management and marketing? Was that the key? I was like, no. They're like, how did you do it? And I was like, prayer and meditation at the start of each day. That's how I did it.
That's not great.
And I remember there was one individual, I would have different people from the university that would then come and interview me, or different people would ask questions. Sometimes we get the question, what's the secret to success? Or, how did you become successful? How did you build this multi-million-dollar business? And I remember one individual that I told that, I said, well, I started every day with prayer and meditation, and I didn't know how to do it, but God does. And he got so mad. He just got mad, and he's like, if you don't want to tell me your secret, just then don't tell me. And he walked off. I was like, no, that can't be it. Even the business partners, they were always looking for some other answer. And I'm like, no, there's a reason that this skinny pinhead who had failed at business and couldn't get hired, that is the reason I was successful. That is the secret.
That's great. Well, we'll switch gears back to the home. I wanted to know, how do you think a husband can you best help your wife and your children? We talked about leadership.
Well, one of the things that I support my wife, and she does take the bulk of the homeschooling responsibilities and the day-to-day duties with the homeschooling. But in my businesses and in my home, I always try to take an approach of a stewardship delegation, to where you give them the resources and the tools and you support them to do it. So I was like, I have full confidence in my wife. If she comes and says, hey, I think we should do this, I'm like, absolutely, let's do it. Or if we counsel together on different things, but a lot of things is like, what's best. Let her do those things that she thinks will be beneficial for the children and for our family, and then provide her with the resources and support to make that successful.
So we've talked about some successes you've seen in your business. What are some successes you've seen in your family?
Well, one story that comes to mind was it was actually for a class in classical conversations. It was a course that our children were doing, and they asked my son to give a presentation on his favorite book series. I found out he did his report on the 8 attributes of great achievers. He was so excited. He's like, oh, Dad, you did volume 2 of that book. It's now a series. He says, I can do my report on those books. And I was like, well, that's great. And it's been exciting to see, as like when the books come off the press, my son Mitchell is usually one of the first people to read the book. I always have, some of the cases that are sent directly to my home, and he'll open up those cases right when they come off the truck, and he wants one of those first copies of the book. And that was fun to see how excited he was to read the books, but then how excited he was to do a report to the other people in the class on his favorite book series. And he likes the Michael Vey book series by Richard Paul Evans and The Diary of the Wimpy Kids. And I was like, wow, I wouldn't have thought my books would have beat those out. But but I think that's what's good, where they start to see and they start to love to learn. I love reading biographies, and that's one of the reasons I've written some of the different books that I have, is I've read hundreds and hundreds of biographies, and you start to see a pattern, and you start to see principles and character attributes that these individuals followed, and you also see that they all started out very similar. and they had to grow and develop and become. It's exciting to then see my children read those stories, love those stories, and say, hey, I want to be more like Philo Farnsworth. I want to have that spirit of innovation. Or I want to be more like John Wooden and have that discipline and following fundamentals, or like Nephi Grigg, who invented the tater tot, and his creativity and hard work. So it's fun to see the children start to one, love to learn and try to emulate some of these great individuals, and then to see them wanting to develop those characteristics and seeing them striving to emulate, some of those principles and values that we try to model and teach.
And maybe that comes because of your time. I mean, we talked about at the beginning how you do take time during the day, even though you're working and all of those types of things, to be, part of their lives too.
Yeah, he actually knows that I'm an author, so yeah. I guess that's good. That he knows what I do. He's read the books, and so that he can then be involved in a part of that process. And I think that is part of it, to where they feel like it's not something that Dad just does. It's something that is a part of our family, and that they get to help. They get to help when we are packaging books, or when we're doing different marketing campaigns, or when I'm doing some research, that I'll have them get children's books on the different individuals I'm studying. And some of those stories that I say, well, what were the stories that you liked from the Wright brothers, or from, Walt Disney, or Abraham Lincoln, and Mahatma Gandhi, and as they tell me some of those stories that they pull out of those children's books, some of them make it into the book, so that they're a part of that process, so they can help me with the research, so that feels like it is partly their book, in that they did help with the research and help develop it. And as we're designing book covers, they get to pick out, which cover they like better, and all those fun things. So to involve them in that process. So I think that also helps to then why that would be their favorite books, because they were involved in a part of it.
So what would you say? I mean, we've talked about more time together and being able to be part of their overall day, and then also with your business and stuff, including them. What would you say some benefits are? Is there any other benefits that you can see from having them home and doing their school at home?
Yeah, I think one of the greatest benefits is those relationships that are developed. And a lot of it takes time. When you look at who you become friends with and who you develop relationships with, it's typically who you spend time with.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that can be hard if they're gone for 8 hours a day at school, and then if they're gone at other sporting events and gone at all the activities that are outside of the home, then you see that a lot of their relationships and friendships and bonds are stronger with people outside the home than inside the home.
Yeah, that is true.
And so that, I think, has been one huge benefit, to see the relationship that my children have with each other. See the relationship they have with their mom, where they're interacting with her all throughout the day, and they're being instructed by her. And then the relationship they have with me as I'm able to participate in those activities during the day some. But I think that's been one of the biggest benefits is the time we're able to spend together, and those bonds and relationships that are formed as a result of that.
Yeah, we've kind of been sold a tagline of, you can have quality time together, but that's really, you get quality time when you get quantity time too. What are some of your long-term goals as a family and then for yourself? Again,
as I've said, our goal is that we may be good disciples of the Lord Jesus Christ. And so as we work as a family, we look at that. So I think our long-term goal is to become better instruments in the hands of the Lord, to increase our faith, and to help build the kingdom of God, and to help prepare for the return of Jesus Christ. And so I'd say our long-term goal is that if we can help each of our children develop that characteristic, because if they can learn how to be an instrument in the hands of the Lord, they'll do just fine. That's what's like, people say, well, aren't you worried about them maybe being behind in mathematics? Or aren't you maybe worried that they're behind in their reading level? Or aren't you worried they may be behind in some of their history? Again, I'm not ever worried about comparison and a lot of those things that are a part of the public system or having to be at certain points at certain areas. But I was like, even if they are behind in relation to the public standards, as long as they're ahead in faith, they'll be just fine.
Yeah.
So I think that's our long-term goal, is to help them develop faith, help them increase their faith, and help them learn how to learn and learn how to do and create and build. And as they do those things, then the whole world is open to them. And they can then, as a family, our goal is to say, what can we do to make the world a better place? So we're always looking at who can we serve, who can we lift, how can we become better, and how can we make our community better, our state better, our nation better, the world better, as we help the children develop that skill of faith, as they become an instrument in the hands of God. One of the parables that I teach is the parable of the baseball bat. And this was an analogy I use very often. How many times have you gone to a baseball game and someone hits a home run? Have you ever heard anyone in the crowd say, wow, look at that bat. That bat was amazing. Did you see how far that bat hit that ball? You know, we don't praise the bat. We praise the batter. And in life, we have to learn that we are the bat, and we are to be an instrument in the hands of the Master, Jesus Christ. And if we become an instrument in his hands, doesn't become about the bat. You know, as I teach that example to my children, I was like, now, whether Jesus had a wooden bat or a metal bat or a small bat or a big bat, do you think he could still hit a home run? They're like, well, absolutely. And I say, see, it doesn't matter so much about the bat as it matters about the batter. And so as you learn to become an instrument in his hands, then he can use you to hit a home run. So he can hit a home run with Mitchell. He can hit a home run with Kennedy. He can hit a home run with Enoch. He can hit a home run with me. But then when the home run's hit, don't try to take the praise or glory. That's as silly as someone saying, hey, I want that bat's autograph. Give me that bat's autograph. I got to go meet that bat after the game. I can't believe how far he hit that ball. As they can learn and develop that skill, then the Lord can then mold them into the instrument he wants and can use them to accomplish great things. My favorite scripture, which also gets quoted very often, is Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
That's awesome. I think that's the same one Paula did too. Surprise, surprise. So how do you think as a society we can learn to value men more? I guess one of my frustrations is that we really downplay a father's role. What do you think we can do to value our fathers more often?
We need to give people the models of great fathers to emulate. And there are. And that's the thing. You still look across this great nation. And that's why I think so much of what's portrayed in the media, those things is still the minority.
Yeah.
That there are still, as I go across the country, or as I meet different people here throughout southeastern Idaho, I am amazed at the wonderful husbands and fathers that I meet.
There's still men that care. I mean, definitely.
Still, as I go and I serve with some of my different ministries that I'm involved in, there's one men's ministry in South Carolina that I assist with. But as I go out there and I've taught as a part of their men's ministry, I've taught men's ministries in Vegas and in different parts of the world, but I'm always amazed that there is still so many wonderful men who are leading, who are becoming better, who do love the Lord. We need more people that see that model and that example.
Yeah, more people that recognize it. You
know, you have the media, as you said, that kind of tries to portray or negate that. So yeah, we need to find ways to celebrate it and recognize it. You know, we need a biography on great fathers and on great mothers.
There's a good book idea for you.
So, you know, as we look at some of their accomplishments and their achievements, hey, yes, some of those things were fantastic that they did. But the even greater work they did was as a husband and father. But you may not always hear about that. Yeah, I should change my bio at the beginning to say, well, he's a good husband and father. But again, you hear about, oh, he's a author of this, or he does this business, or he's a president of this, and you're just like, well, yeah, but really, when it comes down to it, the most important work that I will do will be the work I do in my family. So that is a good book idea. So we need to do a book that celebrates fathers and celebrates mothers, because that is the greatest work that we'll do. So
what are some changes that you'd like to see in the world? That's one of my favorite questions. Either that or the legacy that you want to leave. That's one of my favorite last questions.
Well, I'm usually not short for words. mean, one of the things that, one of the things that I'd like to see changed in the world, and one of the things we try to assist with our time and resources, is that it always just pains me if I see any child that is hurt. And you see unfortunately, there is way too much child abuse and child neglect. As we start seeing the breakdown of the family, start seeing how that negatively impacts so many children all across our nation and throughout the world. And so I would like to see those things minimized. And I think so we work to try to prevent any child from having to experience any neglect or abuse of any kind. But a lot of that starts by strengthening families and strengthening homes and by teaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. But for those who've already been hurt in some way, we find ways that we can serve and assist some of those children who are affected by the negative choices of others, those who the Lord said, those who are innocent. And the Lord has a great love for his little children. And when we do it unto one of the least of these, that we do it unto Christ. And so
before we say goodbye, do you have any final parting words of advice or maybe a favorite quote that you'd like to share? And then please tell us how we can get in touch with you.
One of my favorite great achievers that I've written about is a gentleman by the name of Philo T. Farnsworth. And as the inventor of television, which was, Rigby, Idaho, where I live, is known as the birthplace of television. But even here, most people don't know a whole lot about this great man. So of all the different people I've read, he was right at the top of the people I really enjoyed studying and learning about, because he was an instrument in the hands of the Lord. In one of his interviews after discovering television, he was asked about inventing television. And his response to the question was, he's like, I didn't invent television. He said, I was simply an instrument in the hands of the Lord to bring forth television. And I thought that was an interesting response. And to read his life as a 14-year-old boy, he received inspiration from above on how to develop television as he studied. But he had studied for years, getting up early in the morning and studying for hours every morning before he went out to work on the farm. Coming up with a way that he said, he discovered his mission, what the Lord wanted him to do. He says, I am going to be an inventor. And then he searched for a problem, and he saw that there were people trying to solve that problem of how to transmit images. Radio was popular and growing, but no one had come up with a way to transmit pictures and video. He said, that's what I'm going to do. And so as a 14-year-old boy, he received a revelation on how to develop an all-electronic television as he was plowing a potato field here in Rigby, Idaho. And he had several labs throughout his life. Television was only one of many inventions. He had 300 patents at the time of his death. He developed the first baby incubator. He developed the gastroscope. A doctor came to him and said, hey, could you develop a camera where I could see inside people's esophagus and stomach? And he developed that. And so hundreds of different inventions. Television was just the first. And he continued to innovate and create. He had office in L.A., and he had a lab in San Francisco, he had a lab in Indiana, he had a lab in Idaho throughout his career as a inventor. But he had a theme, and I'll close with this, is that he had a motto in his lab. And now this is a motto that we've now tried to make as a motto as part of our home as we're working on different projects and different challenges. And that motto that he had for each of his labs was, the difficult we do right away, the impossible takes slightly longer.
That is great. And how do we get in touch with you?
Well, you can reach me. My personal website is CameronCTaylor.com. So that will have information about my different books. It also does have a contact page. They could go on there and send me an email, or the emails from there, they come to me. Okay. So, and I respond to every email or letter I get. So if someone takes the opportunity to write or reach out to me, I will personally respond.
That is great. Now I know why my son was so enthralled with you. I really appreciate you coming on and discussing, how we can be and honor our fathers better. Thank you.
You are welcome. Thanks for having me on. It was fun.
Yeah, it was really fun. Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. To learn more about Cameron Taylor, go to our show notes at theluminousmind.net. Also, be sure to become a subscriber to our free email list so you can receive notifications for our weekly audio blog, The Spark. We would love to have you join our program. Do so by going to the scheduling tab and become a fire starter today. Help support the podcast by making all your Amazon purchases through the free Amazon widget on our website, theluminousmind.net. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Google+. Get our audio content on iTunes, YouTube, and Stitcher. Leave us a review. Tell us how we can help you so together we can continue to light minds on fire and change the paradigm of education.